Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Sam, some Norwegian Midwest emo for you. This was the band's first and only album, which they recorded in a single session with no rehearsals, after which they immediately broke up. I'm a little worried. A 10-minute emo track with no rehearsal. This is either going to be mind-blowing to the point I won't be able to believe it was done without rehearsals, or it's going to sound exactly what I expect. It's either going to be messy or a pretty large jam. So, let's dive into this, see what's going on with a bunny's Caravan, Enclosed by Skies. The drummer's fantastic. I love all the melodic drumming going on here.
Skin was darkened by the sun. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. Your skin was darkened by the sun. Been bathing all summer long. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in love. 'Cause I told my friend that I think I'm in Our house was small but beautiful. Our pictures on the walls. Remember how proud we looked as we turned to bed that night.
And that's a Norwegian dude singing that line? It replicates the American Midwest accent very well. I would never have guessed without that context. I was trying to figure out how we were gonna have a 10-minute Midwest emo track. It's post-rock with an emo like tint to it. Interesting note choices on that synth in the backgrounds.
I have done some soul searching. I do not love you. In fact, I have not loved you for quite some time. I just did not realize. Sorry. Let us stay friends.
Many questions remain. The cycles of strain push me out. All the quest for my pride. Come on, live it all. She's got me telling lies. A million trials I told you. Flee with her eyes of faith. Come home, now I'm done. It sounds so amazing, turning the best. She must be magneted and we'd be friends. It's easier if we try to fake it now. Scattered fractions of myself.
All right. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. I pulled up the rest of the album. It's an '06 album called Draining Puddles Retrieving. There's 6 tracks in total on it. It does run for 46 minutes, but 10 of those are on this track and 15 are on the final track. Tracks 2, 3, 4, and 5 sit around the 5-minute length on each of them, which is pretty typical for Midwest emo. That's sort of what I expect. And there was certainly a strong, more traditional Midwest emo vibe in here in that final vocal section. The composition of it, the vocal led writing, the vocal delivery, honestly, still surprises me. That I think was a really strong core emo moment. Whereas the intro and outro leaned a little bit more into the post rock side of things with elongated emotional explorations of an atmosphere. And using layers to build intensity and emotion throughout a longer section. Because honestly, this track kind of boils down to 4 ideas. We have the intro, which is a very slow build up into the first full band section. I guess there's another section we bring the energy down. I guess there's 5 sections. And there's some spoken word stuff in here, some light singing, and then some sampling. Mostly an empty atmosphere. This pulls us into our penultimate section, which was the full powered vocal section on top of the full emo part, and then the outro, which went into an instrumental slow burn. Actually, when I think about it that way, it felt a bit long for me. Certainly the instrumental sections started to reach a point of too much repetition for me personally. I'm sure if you enjoy slow burns or maybe even post rock in general, you'd really enjoy this. That's usually a genre of music and a style of writing that's a bit more difficult for me to get into, particularly in this setting. Maybe if it was a more casual listen, I dig it more, but trying to actively think about all the music and trying to take it in, figure out what it means, I'm always looking for new information, and slow burns tend to deliver that to me slowly. So I'm left just kind of waiting. But yeah, I think they did a great job pulling all of this together and creating something that works. I'm interested to see the rest of this. I've already listened to a fourth, give or take, of this album. I'll pull this aside. I may end up checking out more of this. If nothing else, the other 4 shorter tracks, the 15-minute one, I mean, I might as well. If I've already got that far into the album, might as well finish it up. But it's not one that I'm necessarily looking forward to, given what they did with this track. Now, this track does have longer instrumental parts to it. Our intro and outro are based around that. The outro is primarily arpeggiation over here. Dun 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 da 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 dun dun. Those aren't the right notes, but that is generally the pattern there. I'm not a singer. I can't sing the same pitches that they were playing. Mine was more carnival-esque than emo, but whatever. That's pretty much what this guitarist is doing. As the chord changes, the notes change to match the new chord, but it's just this rising and falling pattern with a little bit of movement towards the end. Now, this side over here, we have a little bit more melodic writing coming from them. This is what drives most of this section forward, but it is ultimately an ostinato. It's not a linear melody. It is a looped idea. It does have however many bars it ends up being. We just repeat that over and over. The bass gives us a lot of bass line stuff. A lot of root tone stuff. Of course, the bass is playing the bass line. They give us root tone things. There is a couple of moving parts, both in the intro instrumental and the outro instrumental, but it was a rarity compared to how often they would just kind of lay down on a single note the root of the chord. I did find the drums to be interesting at the beginning, not so much at the end where they kind of just locked into a human metronome vibe. We'll talk about the drums in a second though. But this is pretty much the makeup of the intro and the outro. Harmonic information, some melodic riffage, and some drums. Fairly straightforward. And this makes up so much of this track. Well, that and silence. The intro is this static hum in the background before the guitar comes in. And in the middle of the track, we return to sort of this hum while we get some light vocal lines before the instruments come back in. On the topic of no rehearsal, the first thing I thought of, though, was that they just went into the recording studio and recorded it. Given that it's '06, it's quite possible this was recorded track by track. Or I don't know how else you would describe, like in an audio workstation, you just record each part on a separate track, or stems, sometimes they're called. But yeah, so your bass records their line. If they're not happy with it, you just delete it and record the next one. And you keep doing takes until you get it. Through that process, yeah, certainly you could probably do this without rehearsing at all. But there's so many intricate parts in this that my original idea of recording it all at once in the older tape style, where everyone just kind of went into the studio and they played the song from start to finish, and that's a take. I thought that there's no way you could do this, especially as we got further into this track. It is kind of jammy at times, but I think a lot of this is pre-composed in a way. There doesn't seem to be any sort of communication between instruments as far as one instrument starting an idea and then within that same concept, another instrument like responding to it or bringing in some sort of idea that is based off of that original sound. You can see this in all sorts of jam bands, whether it is a jazz solo in a jazz group like big band or something, or even if it's just like a jammy rock session, you'll hear the guitarist. They're like, all right, I got a new idea. They'll shift to a new riff. The bassist might use the accent points to start their next idea, or the drummer might use some of the rhythmic devices in this new riff in order to build out a new rhythmic device. And this is how jam sessions have this feeling of like natural evolution, where you can't really say this was the A section and this was the B section and this was the C section, because it just kind of, it's amorphous. It shifts into ideas very fluidly. It's less rigid because there's this element of communication going on, but this track very cleanly fits into blocks. There is an idea, a vision set for this track before they got to the recording. Now, maybe they didn't rehearse their parts, but I do believe that there were plenty of takes being done, and maybe they did improvise some parts for the recording process. But this wasn't what I expected, which was going to be rougher, because I expected this to be a one take, one shot recording. And it wasn't. So I don't know if anyone else needed that clarification. It was something I went through trying to understand how this could have been done without rehearsal. But I do think it's something that people create music in this manner more often today. And I've even been a part of this. Y'all know I come from a classical background. I come from writing sheet music. I've used programs like Sibelius and the notation for Guitar Pro. I know a lot of people use tabs in Guitar Pro, but I used traditional music notation just to jot out music. But some people just open an audio workstation, noodle around on their keyboard or their guitar or whatever, and like, oh, okay, that's cool. Then they get the drums, whether that's digital drums or they're hooking up an electronic drum kit or they're miking their drums, and then they just make some stuff up. They do a few takes until they like what they've done there, and you just build this piecewise. And I think that's how this was created. No rehearsal, maybe a lot of improvisation, but ultimately there is a goal and an idea. This isn't jammy, this isn't fluid, organic growth, but it also isn't rehearsed, at least not in the traditional sense of writing it out, practicing it, then taking it to studio. Now, onto the track itself and kind of talking about what it's doing. This song is, I mean, at its heart, it is Midwest emo. When we look at the emotion of it, the chord progression, the atmosphere we are in, from start to finish, there is a mix of, I don't know if it's joy, but there is a positivity and a regret. Maybe it's bittersweet. Ultimately, there's a positive and a negative in here. I'm not entirely sure what exactly they are. They feel not nuanced. I don't think that's the right word, but they are maybe muted, where we're not getting a like 100% blast of this emotion. Like when you listen to some death metal and it's just aggression, you can feel that rage in the way it's being growled, in the guitar tone, in the ferocity of the drums. Like anger is what you're being just slammed over the head with. That's not what this is. This feels muted. Like if that's 100% anger or 100% of emotion, this would be like 30% of the positive and like 30% of the negative, where they're closer to being neutral, but they're not. And that kind of creates an instance where it's a little more difficult to get the feeling of it out because it's not as blunt with its emotion. It's more nuanced in that sense, but I don't think it's a nuanced emotion where it feels in multitudes. Regret is definitely something I get out of this, some sort of sorrow from the past. I'm not too sure what the positive is, but there is, it's not necessarily a melancholic or a sad song overall. There is some sort of feeling of moving on, getting on with life, thinking of the good times along with this regret, some sort of balancing out to that negativity. And this is present from the very start with the two guitars coming in. I love how we have all these dual guitar things in here. This is an emo trope, where you just have two guitars doing totally different things within their own realms, but they are kind of working together, at least harmonically. And neither of them are just strumming out chords. Even when we have a purely harmonic guitar line over here, like at the end, it's chord shaping rather than chord strumming. We're not just playing the entire chord, we're going note by note and sort of shaping out the chord from the lowest to the highest, back to the lowest. And so we have all this movement from these guitars. We have movement from the bass. We have movement from the vocals. Well, I guess when the vocals actually play along or sing along with the instruments, it creates all of this direction, all of this momentum. The track, even in the moments when it seems content at sitting in these emotions and just dwelling within them, which does fit into my feelings of regret with this track and looking towards the past, is being locked into these moments of dwelling within them. But even in these moments, it never feels static. It never feels stuck. It's always pushing forward in some way or another, whether that is directionality in note choices. Instead of just hovering around one single note, we have rising and falling patterns. That is momentum. That is direction. But we also have ever shifting layers too, especially within the first 4 minutes or so, 3.5 minutes. We're continuously adding more layers. We're building towards something. And we saw a little bit of this at the end, though I felt there were just less layers present there. And that's probably because we came in with the full band already. So looking towards the past, but one foot in front of the other, is kind of the vibe I'm getting from this. I mentioned I would talk about the drums. Yeah, dude, the drum work in the first third of this is just great. I love that melodic drum work. It feels like they are another instrument alongside the two guitars who are already doing their own moving lines, are already being melodic in quality, even if they're not necessarily playing strict melodies. The bass has moving lines, and the drummer's like, well, I'm not sitting on the sidelines for this. I'm gonna play some more melodic ideas too. And it's no longer just like snare on 2 and 4, bass kick syncopated against that high note or hi-hat on every beat. They're very locked in, rigid rhythmic devices. It's more free form. The accent points come from different parts of the kit, and we have all the cymbals being used. There's toms. It feels like every part of the kit is a different note, creating these melodic ideas. And one, I'm just a real big fan of that from drummers in general, but here I love the way that it works within the context of the guitars, playing around with the rhythms that they're laying down too, and almost feeling like the drummer's trying to create triads with the two guitars. The entire thing feels incredibly cooperative in a way that jam sessions just usually don't, and this was one of the first things that had me interrogate how I perceived this was probably created without rehearsing. because right off the bat, I just thought there's no way these two guitarists and this drummer are doing this with no practice. How would they go about doing that? So the drum work here is just phenomenal. And yeah, it was a joy to listen to. I wish we would have had more of this at the end. We did get it at the tail end of the track, the final 30 or 40 seconds or so, that very last outro section. But I would have liked more of it in the lead up instrumental part. Now, the song does have really great pacing. We start out low, we rise up, bring it back down again, we rise up, and then we escalate from there. A lot of this, though, seems to be built around the vocals, and I was actually a little concerned about the vocals, wondering if part of this no rehearsal approach was to only allow the vocals to exist when there was no instrumentation. I thought it was also very cool to have the vocals isolated as they were. One, if this is about something more personal, a story of loss or regret or something like that, having the vocals be introduced to the listener within almost pure silence is incredibly intimate and vulnerable. Lyrics will hopefully be in that direction too, to match the emotion of the music in the track. But even in this moment, atmospherically, it feels like we are in a room with no one else but the vocalist. If the lyrics are intimate, this is an intimate sound to pair with it. And I thought that was a beautiful way to introduce them. But then they came in pretty strong with a fully projected sound coming in for the final stanza. And I absolutely love this section too, and the way that the vocals played off of the melodic elements in the guitars, the way that rhythmically they danced with the drums, and how they also just subverted this idea of the quiet, almost whispery vocals and pushing that outwards. If this is about regret, maybe this is trying to fix that, taking a stance, putting the energy behind effort, where we saw less effort or maybe less confidence within the quieter section. It's just really great contrast from a musical perspective, but it can push the themes in so many different ways based just on the narrative qualities of the music that was being played. Really great job all around. I think it's going to wrap it up on this one. We've talked about structure, pacing, vocals, drums, the instrumentals, the atmospheres. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground in what I've only been talking like 15 minutes. It's crazy. What am I doing being concise over here? That's unusual. Let's hit some lyrics. This is a track about, I mean, part of it is reminiscing on old times, but the final stanza is more present. In fact, the final sentence is "My bitterness is closing in," which kind of has a little bit of present and future in it, an understanding of what is about to happen. But the first three stanzas, which is all the whispered part, they're reminiscing on the past. It says, I first saw you on the grass, slightly shy, enclosed by skies, and I told my friend, I think I'm in love. Your skin was darkened by the night, been bathing summer long, and I found my troubles drained by starlets, could you tell? Our house was small but beautiful, our pictures on the walls. Remember how proud I looked as we turned it to bed that night. This idea of youthful relationship, seeing someone just laying on the grass at a park or something and becoming completely smitten. Having a little bit of time skips here as we see that they're moving from this initial moment of love at first sight into their relationship developing. Then we have this sampled part here. I think this is two separate samples. I only remember one voice, but this doesn't make any sense as a single idea. It says, I've been thinking we're so good together. Let us stay together forever. I love you. That is so true, and I love you too. The second part of this is, I have done some soul searching, but I do not love you. In fact, I've not loved you for quite some time. I just did not realize. Sorry. Let us stay friends. I vaguely remember the voice in this feeling robotic, Sort of like an old school robot voice from like an 80s or 90s, maybe even prior to that, sci-fi film. Very stilted, rigid delivery. I'm curious what to read into that. But then we have the more projected parts of the vocals. It says, many questions remain. It's been so long. My cycles were strange, pushed me out on a quest for my pride. I can see the time we ran and we walked. It's been so long. To believe she's got me telling her lies, emerging trials I tend to flee when her eyes are off of me. This feeling of getting out of sync with someone. I really like this line here. I think it tells so much about our narrator. She's got me telling her lies. So this person has come to a point in their relationship where they feel they can no longer be truthful, maybe out of shame, maybe out of regret, maybe out of power, who knows? But it's not them. They place the blame on the other. They're no longer truthful because the other person has got me telling her lies. Like I said, it shows a lot about the character here. Then says, I can see the time we ran. We walked. Hey, come hope, I won't damn you. It sounds so amazing turning the bends, and she must be mad thinking that we would be friends. It's easier if we try to fake it now. Scattered fractions of my sins, I'd throw them out, but I want to keep the wins. My bitterness is closing in. I assumed, based off of the spoken word section, that their lover was the one who changed, who fell out of love with our narrator, but these final sentences here make it sound like it's the narrator. It's easier if we try to fake it now. The relationship is comfortable. Just kind of push through it and stick with it, because breaking up, going back to being single, maybe they live together. There's a lot of complications to that. It's just easier if we just fake this through. But his bitterness is closing in. He feels resentment towards this person, and he's not going to be able to fake it forever. But there's still an element of this relationship that he enjoys having. Part of it is the comfort, but also just having it. I want to keep the wins. Maybe he views the end of a relationship as a loss rather than another step forward in life. I find this interesting because there is duality to this, but it's not quite what I expected. It's not what I understood to be in the music. This isn't, I mean, part of this is looking on the past, and there is a little bit of regret to this, but I don't think regret's the main idea. It's the duality of fear and need to move on. It's not being as engaged in a relationship anymore, but being too scared to leave it. Of wanting to move on, of wanting to take that step forward, but not having the certainty of self to do that. And through all of this, he ends up being a terrible partner. Ends up lying to her, leading her on, faking the way through this. I think this is really interesting too, because usually when we see end of relationship tracks like this, there's always some sort of blame put on the other. They wanted to leave. They ruined the relationship. They made me want to leave. The relationship was toxic. They left me crying out in the rain. I just wanted to make this work. But here we paint the picture of someone who fell out of love and is kind of just not doing the right thing. And they end up lying and faking their way through this. And you just don't see that. I think it's a very honest look at relationships. Too often in music, the narrator is clean. We get their side of the story and that's it. They look like they're the one that's been hurt. We never get to see when the narrator hurts someone else. And I think that's because a lot of love music is written from sort of a writer insert perspective. You look at pop music, and a pop artist sings about a love track, and a lot of the times it's read as their love song. They're exploring their love life through music rather than a character that they would be singing about, a story divorced from their own. And so you got to put yourself in a positive light. I say you got it. I mean, you don't have to, but I think a lot of egos, especially if you're a big pop star, would demand it internally. So I find this refreshing. Very interesting. Yeah, that's going to wrap this one up. These are my thoughts then on Enclosed by Skies by A Bunny's Caravan. What do you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to add, into the comment section below. Above that in the description box is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, and a bunch of other things. Go ahead and check that out. It's pretty cool. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.